if you've been with us in the early part of the show, you'd have heard Damesh say FFP 47 times, and we're, 39 minutes in. Well, let's get some background on this issue. We can speak to financial expert Daniel Geey, who joins us now. Daniel, thanks very much. Why is FFP so significant in this window?
Well, I think it's been significant for a while, in truth, but I think ultimately FFP, the Premier League rules, the UEFA rules have sort of been etched in everyone's consciousness over the last few months. I think club executives up and down the country will have seen Everton's points deduction, and if they didn't think the regs had teeth beforehand, they certainly do now. So I think there's lots going into the mix at the moment. Everton's points deduction and their appeal is one. There were reports earlier this week that Nottingham Forest might be in trouble, and that might obviously be the next phase for another Premier League club. We've obviously seen over a number of years Manchester City's issues with the profitability and sustainability regulations, which is the Premier League regs, obviously also UEFA's FFP regs before. Reports again more recently that have been reported as well around potentially Chelsea being investigated for potential breaches. And I think the truth also is that in part we're talking about the transfer window. A lot of the time, clubs I've seen use these regulations as a negotiation tactic. You know, they basically explain, well, you know, we don't have as much money to spend. There's potential issues for transfer fees, for wages, for agents' fees. And therefore, we saw at the end of last window, for example, Raya coming in quite late, but that being a loan with a view to a permanent, because perhaps Arsenal, I'm just speculating, were quite close to the PSR numbers and didn't want to end up in breach.
OK, so clubs then have to be pretty smart, don't they? So what are their options to generate funds apart from selling players?
Well, there's lots in truth. We talk at the beginning of the seasons about broadcasting rights and the amounts of money that is generated from that side. We talk about European runs that could be in the Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. There might also be, and there are financial instruments to be able to advance monies if there are transfers that have already been paid and there are certain tranches. Again, the usual stuff around more games, more stadium revenue, and the usual elements as well, which is around new commercial sponsorship deals. So I think we saw or was announced in the last 24 hours. Chelsea have a new sponsor that's going to be on their sleeves, which then might change into their training ground sponsor as well. So there's lots of additional revenue elements. Again, and as one of the other elements that I guess we can talk about soon as well, is why there is added benefits to selling homegrown players to a degree rather than players that are transferred in from other clubs too.
Yeah, tell us. So why? Why is that better?
Well, it depends how much accounting speak you want to have over the next few minutes. But in brief, what effectively happens under accounting rules is when a homegrown talent comes through from the academy, there is no actual accounting value attached to them. So effectively, when they are sold, that is effectively booked as transfer profit. And that whole amount, if it's 40 million or 45 for Palmer when he went from City to Chelsea, or Mason Mount when Chelsea sold him to Manchester United, those full amounts get done and get booked over that particular transfer straight away, rather than if you buy a player for a certain amount of money, that is what's called amortized over their contract. And then there is a slightly more complicated calculation as to whether they've made money or a club has made money on that deal accordingly.
You made accountancy speak very easy to understand, so thank you for that. Finally then, Daniel, we talk about getting players off the wage bill, don't we? Does that actually make any real difference?
Well, it does, specifically because depending on the rules that the club has to adhere to, clubs playing in Europe, clubs playing in the Premier League, clubs playing in the Championship, one of the major costs is obviously wages and transfer fees, but wages being one of the most significant. So there will obviously always be room to be able to take players out on loan to other clubs. They'll also be able to have loans which can have a loan fee between loanee club and loan-all club, and that can bring in more revenue for a particular club, it might also then reduce the wage bill, which gives them flexibility either then to comply with the rules more or to give them more flexibility to bring more players in. But as we know, and as John Murtagh, for example, at Manchester United said more recently, it's more difficult, and some clubs don't have a very active January window. Others see opportunity, like Liverpool, for example, over the last couple of years to be able to find those particular bargains. So again, as we said, sometimes it's a negotiation strategy. Sometimes it's actually to be able to free up particular finances to do deals. And it might just be then to free up money for the next bigger window where clubs have usually the greatest strategy play to be able to bring players in and out over a longer period of time.
Daniel Geey making FFP understandable. Thank you, Daniel.